Hey all, Occida here. Welcome to Flood Escape 2 Map Review Episode 6. We're going to be going with the original format this time around, but before we get started, don't forget to ask some questions for the 2,000 subscriber Q&A. I'm going to be answering most of these questions by the weekend, so don't wait. Today's maps are going to be Flash Flood, Erupting Volcano, and Tunnels. Let's get started. So at a glance, Flash Flood definitely doesn't look bad. It's a major city theme with a simplistic yet individualized buildings, as well as life-size roads and believable architecture. The platforms add to this realism, and we haven't really seen a map in Flood Escape 2 that attempts this sort of realistic approach to the gameplay. However, lack of music isn't really a good design choice in my eyes if it was intended. You've got to get at least some music for the escapers to be jumping to, and in this case, the lack of music doesn't detract from the atmosphere, but it really doesn't add anything, and it's still a minus to the points. Whereas the realistic and open feeling for this map benefits the design, it really hinders the gameplay. At least 80% of the map is filled with just walking. That's a bit much even for an easy map. Getting to the buttons isn't an exercise in parkour, it's an exercise in simply walking and perhaps climbing a ladder or swimming downwards. It feels less of an escape and more of a leisurely stroll through a crumbling city. And while this might just be me, I found the last button a little bit obscure, but I'm bad at Flood Escape, so that might just be me. In terms of practicality, the map gives off at least a minor level of detail, especially with the buildings, and it's definitely feasible for newer players to easily get a grasp of. However, it's nothing but a chore for those who take enjoyment out of more adrenaline-pumping maps, and the overall theme just collides with what I would expect out of a Flood Escape map. It's very at odds. The overall rating I'd give to Flash Flood is 54 out of 100. The idea of the map was somewhat well executed for what it is, but it's hard to find a way to execute it better and make it fit in with the feeling of Flood Escape 2. So let's move on to the next map, which will be Erupting Volcano. Everything in Erupting Volcano just feels kind of supersized. While it necessarily isn't a terrible thing, it feels very open and exposed, which it's a large jump in pace with that of most Flood Escape maps. Most of the other maps are kind of cramped, and this one being open is kind of a slap. I wouldn't call it a slap to the face, but it's definitely eye-opening. It doesn't look too bland or uninspired, but kind of feels a little bit monotonous. The scattered pipes and boxes, they're alright, but they're almost like a bit of a crutch to the platforms being added. And I'd like to see maybe a few more creative ways to incorporate platforming. The other lava-themed map of the hard category, being Lava Tower, is really cramped and feels like a rough climb than a mad dash, so the theme of the map is relatively unique. And the music, while definitely sounding nice, has little to do with the map itself, and brings little correlation to the gameplay. While the name definitely sells what's on the tin, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. If I had to describe the gameplay of this map in one word, I would describe it as satisfactory. It definitely was pretty fun to run through, with really good variability of jump types, and a moderate challenge factor. There are only a few gripes I have with the map's playthrough. First of all, some platforms I tend to get stuck under, but, like, for example, with the first ledge section after getting, I believe it's the third button, but again, that just might be me. Another pretty heavy gripe I have is with the collapsing rocks, the big cube rocks that collapse towards the end of the middle section. They block your way through for a solid 5 seconds, and usually I can't find a way through them, and it's really, really annoying just to have my pace just halted for a full 5 seconds because I can't do anything. It would function a lot better as a collection of smaller rocks than big ones, kind of like the ones maybe in Oriental Grove or the wall in Lost Desert. The map lacks some important detail and kind of feels like an overall uniform experience compared to other maps. It doesn't have different flowing themes like it does in, say, a map like Infiltration, where you have the outside, the tunnels, and then the big room itself. There's some neat shortcuts to aid higher skilled players, and this map doesn't punish newer players whatsoever. It's an overall solid map, and it just needs to be a little bit more close together. If it were, it would definitely fit into Flood Escape 2 pretty well. So Erupting Volcano gets a passing score of 71 out of 100. Much of the loss score comes in the design philosophy of the map, but changes to the map overall, including gameplay, would give it a better score. With that being said, let's move on to today's final map, which is going to be the infamous Tunnels. So, Tunnels for me is kind of a weird map. It has less of a design and more of an aesthetic. You could easily call it a lab, but it doesn't feel like one, and the same can be said for maybe a liquid pumping facility or a rocket launching laboratory or anything else. It presents colors while, on their own, they might look dreary. They contrast really nicely in the map, and they look pretty good. Because of all these factors, it's kind of hard to pinpoint how the platformers might make sense with the context of the map's theme, as it kind of just feels like a regular Flood Escape map, and seeing as this is a pretty big criteria for the design part of the scoring system, I'm just going to have to give it a pass because it achieves its job as a Flood Escape map, and I'm assuming that's what the creator was going for. However, if I'm going to give the theme a pass, I'm definitely not giving the music a pass. Even if it is rather fluid with the gameplay, dubstep for the sake of dubstep has no place in Flood Escape 2. As for the name, it's simple and gives a neat bow tie. It gives a neat, I guess, name placard for the transitions of the map, which I could easily call just connectors, but the transitions serve as an interesting factor with difficulty. Well, I jumped the gun on that. Let's go to gameplay now. So, for the gameplay, I would very much consider it more of a challenge map like we did last episode. It achieves its challenges very nicely, with each room containing a different type of platforming. In this order it goes with standard blocks and platforming, followed by a more roundabout approach that's seen in sections like maybe the second part of Darkside Facility. Then it moves on to trusses and towers, which isn't really seen but definitely adds to some sort of challenge factor. And finally, abstract platforming, which is a lot more difficult to pull off effectively, but is very, very aesthetically pleasing in the map. So the map didn't feel too overwhelming gameplay-wise, and every mistake I made was tangibly mine, with an exception for that last fourth room. The pipes were pretty confusing, and the second button was really annoying to get to. It was definitely, in my opinion, the most difficult part of the map. But it was also super annoying in the fact that if you fell down for that last button, it didn't lead to an instant death if you were quick enough. It led to a slow and annoying one where you had to wait for the lava and you were just sitting there for a good 8 seconds. And the slow sort of death that I have is a really easy way just to get points docked off because it's super annoying. Once you get the grasp of tunnels, it can be really fun to pull off, but at times it can just be annoyingly punishing. This map is surprisingly detailed, and there was clear effort put into every decision of it. The map panders to skilled players extremely well, and it holds nothing back against newer players, which can be rather punishing. It can almost feel like a slap in the face, especially if you're the first time going through and you're just confused that you see these 4 little squares and you just don't know what to do with them. You look under, you can see, oh, I can go through this one, and then you end up getting lost in the tunnels and just dying. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're easily just gonna die over and over and over again. So, Tunnel scores a 71 out of 100. While its gameplay is pretty quality, it suffers from a hefty dip in practicality as well as a confusing design theme and philosophy, which really docks away the points. Well, that does it for today's 3 maps. Do you have any maps you want me to review? Feel free to message me on Roblox by following me. You can also ping me on Discord or simply leave a comment in the comment section below. I have a long list of maps that I still have to review, so hopefully I can get around to doing a lot of these. And don't forget, the Q&A is going to be coming out maybe on Friday, maybe on Saturday, but definitely sometime during the weekend. With all that being said, this has been Occida, and happy escaping.